He works at Apple, has been able to utilize his background to serve and support Apple's efforts in the Mexican market. He's a photographer, an art collector, and is preparing to get married to the love of his life, Maisie. Big hand for Andres.
Hello everyone, thank you for being here. It's a little difficult to follow such great acts. A lot of the speakers that came before were just really touching, a lot of great stories, so thank you. So I want to ask, just to start out, have you guys ever left something that you thought you didn't need? Anybody? Well, I did. And some of that was my culture, my heritage, who I was before I came to the US. But I came as a child. I came at 9 years old. And so I didn't know very much about what I was losing or what I was giving up. When I came to the United States, I didn't speak any English. I was in an ESL class that years later we come to find had some connection to the love of my life. And I learned English really quickly. But before that, while trying to learn English, and while having basically one single friend that lived in my apartment complex, a friend of mine, Christine, we spoke to each other with lizards. We would pick up lizards or try to catch them and show them to each other and think about, how cool they were and how awesome it was that they weren't running away from us. And they were like our little pets. We had a lot of fun. As I learned English and I was able to test out of an ESL class, I began to notice that there started to become a separation between myself and the kids who were in the ESL class and potentially others who may have been around. And this divide got deeper and deeper, and I let myself, or possibly forced myself, to go closer to the side that I wanted to be accepted in. And so this was the American side. Although I lived in Brownsville, Texas, which is 90% or predominantly Hispanic or Mexican community, I found myself becoming friends with probably the only white kids in the school. Although right at first, it wasn't an easy friendship. There was still some hesitation. I remember in 5th grade, a friend of mine named Mars Diaz, who, shout out to Mars, the planet and him. Elon Musk. No. But this guy, for some reason, just didn't like me. And it just so happened that my hand happened to be on his desk, and he stabbed my hand with a pencil. And I looked at my hand, and I had a little piece of lead in my skin. I just wondered, what did I do to not be liked? What did I do that was so bad that he was just so angry? But he, although he was of Hispanic heritage or background, wasn't like me. He had been born and raised in Brownsville, and he only spoke English, like most of the kids that were now in this 5th grade class of mine. And so I thought a lot about that, and I thought, maybe I need to be more like them. Maybe I need to be more like my friends. And so instead of being courageous, like Alex here on her first speech, and really helping others to understand his abilities and who he was there to be, I moved closer to looking to assimilate to them. And I did, and over time, I was just like one of them. I was lucky enough to learn English at a time where maybe my accent wasn't going to be so thick. Although I hear I have an accent from the Valley, I'm not sure. You guys let me know. But nonetheless, I got closer and closer to that culture. And as I grew, it just became part of who I was. And when it came time to doing things that related to our culture, our heritage, even just something that was a mixture of cultures between Brownsville and Matamoros, which was the town right next to Brownsville, there was a festival called Charo Days, which was basically a festival between these two cities that allowed, in a sense, to celebrate the Charos, the cowboys of the day. They say that this dated back, Wikipedia tells us that something in the 30s, to sort of lift people's spirit from the Great Depression. And so these two communities came together and they celebrated this event. And a lot of this was by dressing up in a traditional outfit, Mexican culture, like women with their long dresses with colors and just a lot of beautiful and ornate things. And the boys or the guys would dress in their somewhat simple cowboy uniforms or charo hats that they would have. And I was embarrassed by that. I really, really was embarrassed, and I wanted nothing to do with that. And I feel embarrassed now to have to say that. But it wasn't until much later that I realized what I left, what I was leaving behind. Fast forward a few years, I'm in high school, I've got my friends, I'm part of this group of kids who likes to skateboard and ride bikes and BMX and maybe even motorcycles. A good friend of mine here, who I bought a motorcycle from as a teenager and hid from my parents, is here. Thank you, Keegan, love you. And it was great. I was part of this culture, rock and roll, punk rock. None of the other music that was around was of any interest to me. The music we just heard, at that time, that kid would have been like completely unappreciative of how beautiful what these guys just did and what they've been doing earlier. And I'm really proud to say that I've come forward in time and in myself growing to this point that I can actually appreciate much more than what I did then. But to get to that point, I had to grow. How did I grow? Well, I had to take a journey. And this journey led me even further than just from Mexico City to Monterrey to Matamoros to Brownsville, which in itself was a journey that was incredible. My mother, bless her, she is an incredible woman that did all of that with a single child, or as a single mother. And we got lucky, we came here to the US. But when I graduated high school, I decided that I wanted to go to Hawaii. One, because I wanted to go somewhere that I could get an education, but two, because I wanted to also have a vacation, a 4-year vacation. It turned into 4.5 to 5 years. I kind of quit halfway through, and then I went right back into it. But it was awesome. It was an experience that I think made me who I am. And I think back about what it was being in Hawaii that initially sort of began the transformation of changing who I was and what I thought and what I believed to who I am. And some of that was food. We all love food. We live in a town that has some amazing food. Anywhere you go, there's a little hole in the wall. You just gotta look for them. There's amazing places of all types. Tacos are my favorite. Austin seems to love tacos, so I'm happy about that. But when I first moved to Hawaii, I worked at Chili's. I was 17 years old. I had $300 in my pocket when I moved there, and 1 month's rent paid. And so I moved there. I ended up getting a job at Chili's the second day I was there, 2 blocks from where I lived. So I didn't have to drive. I could walk to work every day, and it was great. Although working in the kitchen wasn't always great, there was a few people there who made it a little better. One of them was a Chilean man and another a Hawaiian man, or younger guy. And over time, we connected through the food that we liked and the food that we cooked and the things that we enjoyed. I didn't really get to enjoy Hawaii the very first year I was there. I was going to school full-time, and I was working full-time. And I lived 2 blocks from the beach, but did not go to the beach one time that whole first year, which is kind of sad. It was mostly because I didn't like to get sandy. And so, you think, why do you go to Hawaii, right? Kids. But I was there, and I was learning. I was learning that there was something special about being able to speak Spanish, about being able to communicate with this gentleman, this Chilean gentleman who, his English was not very strong, and he didn't feel so confident speaking English. And so it was easy for us to communicate, but I saw that there was a divide that was created when we did. When people who didn't speak Spanish there felt that we were talking about them, or that we were making fun of them. And I know that happens a lot. And you have to remember that sometimes people, they speak in their language because they're so insecure about the way they sound and about how they are perceived. But it's not about talking bad about others, because I come to believe that our culture, Hispanic culture in general, is very loving, and we really care for others. And so as that grew, I got to know him, I got to appreciate the things that we did, the hard work that we put in. And as I moved from the first place that I lived there to my next, I began finding jobs in the restaurant industry, which happened to lead me to Mexican restaurants in different parts of Hawaii, which happened to be the fastest growing market in food at the time, possibly still is. So if you're looking to open one, Hawaii's a great place, they love it. If you make great food out there, people will buy it. $10 for a taco? I'd buy it. Well, over time, I became friends with the waiters, I became friends with the cooks. I was one of the cooks, I was one of the waiters. And over time, I became roommates with these guys. And all of a sudden, I lived in this amazing house that somehow we got into. None of us had credit, none of us could afford to get into this 3-story house in this beautiful place, but somebody took a chance on us, and we did. And we ended up having a house full of Mexican guys or Hispanic guys coming in and out. There was salsa music playing in the mornings, there was maná playing at night, caifanes, everything, whatever, all this stuff, like mariachi, everything. And I started to grow, I started to change how I felt about music. I started to change the idea that I had to be ashamed of the heritage or the culture that I came from. And although those things don't completely encompass what the culture is about, I was starting to feel pride for who I was and where I came from. And so little by little, that grew. We'd go to the beach and we'd catch waves, we'd go body surfing. Has anybody ever been body surfing here? A couple people in the back? Surfing? Anybody? Regular surfing? Man, surfing itself is a beautiful thing if you ever get a chance. It is an awesome experience. Being inside of a wave is really like nothing else. Body surfing makes it easy because you don't need to be a pro to be completely engulfed by a wave. You can actually be pretty amateur. As long as you don't go straight, you'll be okay. That'll probably break your neck if you do go straight, so don't do it. But over time, what I also found was that even in Hawaiian culture, Hawaiian people there, they appreciated something about Hispanic culture. They appreciated that we were different, that we did struggle, much like they struggle there, with American stereotypes and things about their culture that they found similar to ours. And so more and more, the more I spent time with people, the more I talked in Spanish with my friends, the more I came to find pride in what I did and who I was. And I never really put the idea together that being this person was going to help me somehow. Even being bilingual, I thought, well, I work in this place, it's just natural to me. And I can just speak Spanish, and that's great. I love it. But when I came back to Texas, I didn't want to go to Brownsville. Definitely not Brownsville, because I knew that it was too easy to have too much fun in Brownsville. It was too easy to go to Mexico and have all you can drink for $5. The tacos, though, that's where it was. But when I did come back, I found that there was some value on a professional level to who I was and to where I came from. And although I've been nearly 3,000 miles to the west, to Hawaii and back, that my mother had come from Mexico City working in prisons, trying to help people with psychology and social problems, and moving on our own to Matamoros, to eventually meeting my stepfather. I was this person that came, it's not a real circle, but it kind of came full circle, right? And I started really appreciating that the person that I was then, what I had left behind, was not something worth leaving behind. I felt that now I could be proud of who I was and of the heritage that I came from, of the family that I had, of the friends that I had met, and all the people that changed my life, that gave me the appreciation for music, for culture, for life, for being different. There was something great about that. And so coming to Austin, I had the opportunity, not knowing, being a huge fan of Apple, not coming here, I didn't know Apple was here. And it just so happened that while looking for an apartment, I came across the Apple corporate office. And I thought, one day I'm gonna work there. And I didn't know how it was gonna happen. I didn't even try it, didn't even apply. How does one get a job without applying, right? Well, one day working somewhere else, somebody said, hey, we know you love Apple. They have some positions open, and they need somebody for the Mexico team. Do you want to apply? And I said yes. And so I've been there for 7 years now, and although I'm not working in the Mexico team now, I do get a chance to speak to people from all over, whether it's the US, sometimes they call from Afghanistan with voice over IP, and they're talking in all sorts of languages, but whenever I can, I bust out the Spanish, because it helps. Even to those who don't understand it, they appreciate it. And so I appreciate you guys for listening, and I'm Andres Cavazos. Thank you.
Thank you, Andres.